Thank you, everybody, for coming to the College Football Betting with Aaron Torres YouTube channel. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. Go ahead, click that subscribe button. It helps our channel grow. It helps our audience grow. I appreciate it more than you know, as we're talking college football on this channel year-round. Appreciate your support. Click that subscribe button. Today, we are talking about the Ohio State Buckeyes out of the Big Ten. They are the Big Ten favorites in the FanDuel Sportsbook. And oh, by the way, they're over-under at FanDuel. It is 10.5 wins. That is one of the highest over-under win totals in the entire sport of college football. Should mention, by the way, they are plus 150 to win the Big Ten as well. Let's dive into Ohio State. We obviously always start with the season before. By the way, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. But listen, we always start with the season before. And for Ohio State, listen, there's not that much new to talk about from last year that is any different than talking about this team at this time last year or at this team in the summer of 2021. Great regular season up until the final weekend. You fall short against Michigan. Now, their credit, I don't want to discredit what Ohio State did. Couple really big wins. Notre Dame, that iconic game you score in the final seconds. Ryan Day screaming at Lou Holtz. You beat Penn State at home, but you play Michigan. The game's in Ann Arbor. Jim Harbaugh's not there, and you can't get over the hump. Now, that's not all on Ryan Day. Obviously, look, Kyle McCord is not the quarterback that he has had in the past. C.J. Stroud, Justin Fields. But it does sort of fall on Ryan Day because that was 3 years in a row. So they lose to Michigan. They go to that Cotton Bowl against Missouri. They get beat up in the Cotton Bowl. And I think really that was rock bottom. I actually got into an argument about this with an Ohio State fan the other day. He said, once we lost to Michigan, it didn't matter. I said, no. I feel like when you lost to Michigan, a lot of the blame fell on Kyle McCord. Then Kyle McCord transfers out. You go to the Cotton Bowl. Devin Brown gets hurt. Kindholz is not able to do much of anything. You can't move the football. You lose. And it brings us to the offseason where Ryan Day just went on a warpath. Okay, so we've all heard about the NIL rumors, innuendo. I don't care. It's college football 2024. You're paying players. It's fine. We'll get over it, whatever. But at the same time, Ohio State used that huge alumni base, that huge fan base. I respect the hell out of Ohio State fans. They quite literally put their money where their mouth is. First of all, I think it's important to note a lot of key players returning off last year's team that could have gone pro. Mecca Buka could have gone pro. Travion Henderson, the running back, could have gone pro. JT Tuimoloau, star defensive lineman, could have gone pro. Denzel Burke could have gone pro. I could go on and on. The point being, 6-7 guys that could have been in the league right now are instead back at Ohio State. Beyond that, and this is where Ryan Day and Ohio State certainly made headlines, they went after it in the portal. Add Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss. Add Will Howard, the quarterback from Kansas State. Add Julian Sayin, a 5-star quarterback from Alabama who transferred after Nick Saban retired. And, of course, the big one, Caleb Downs, the All-American freshman safety, goes from Alabama to Ohio State. And so with it, you add all that talent. Worth noting, you bring in Chip Kelly to run the offense, your offensive coordinator, and it's kind of put up or shut up time in Columbus, so let's get into this team. On offense, listen, I'm curious for a few different reasons. First off, last year, if you go back, it was the first time that Ryan Day did not have an NFL quarterback, and this offense was good, but it was far from elite. 44th nationally in scoring, 47th in total yards, 87th in rushing. And so on the one hand, part of the reason Chip Kelly was brought in, he is a great run game coach. Even at UCLA, where people, whatever they thought about UCLA, Chip Kelly always had a great run game to complement the vertical passing game. The passing game is actually where he struggled at UCLA. The run game has never been an issue under Chip Kelly. So that's where it gets interesting for two reasons. One, by the way, we're recording before Ryan Day has officially named a starter. I think we all expect Will Howard to be the starter once the season begins. But it's interesting because Will Howard, one, is kind of a dual threat guy, doesn't have a huge arm, 24 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 61% completion percentage last year. Two, the O-line has not been great, so that is where you certainly need improvement. But then more importantly, you got plenty of weapons to get it to, especially in the run game. Mention Quinshon Judkins coming in from Ole Miss. How about this? Two-time first-team All-SEC running back. 1,500 yards and 16 TDs as a freshman. 1,100 yards and 15 TDs a season ago at Ole Miss. All this dude does is make big plays. Oh, by the way, you get back Travion Henderson. I know he's been banged up each of the last 2 seasons, but last year, despite missing some time, was still close to 1,000-yard rusher. So you hope the run game is better. You certainly expect the pass game to be better because that wide receiver room is bananas, okay? First off, Emeka Egbuka does come back. Another guy that could have gone pro. We just mentioned him a minute ago. Even with injuries, 41 catches, 515 yards, 4 TDs a year ago. On top of that, you bring back Carnell Tate, a former 5-star, 18 catches a season ago. And the guy that has certainly made headlines this offseason, Jeremiah Smith, not only the number one ranked wide receiver in high school football a year ago, the number 1 ranked player in America. He has come to Ohio State and he blew people away in the spring. So that offense, you'd hope it'd be improved. I think it certainly comes down to Will Howard. That run game has to get going behind a good, but not yet proven to be elite offensive line. The good news, you want to talk elite. Listen, we can criticize Ryan Day for a lot. That Jim Knowles hire gets better and better every single year. Last year, Ohio State's defense was filthy. You know, they gave up 11.5 points per game, second in the country, 265 yards a game, second in the country, the number 1 ranked pass defense in America. Here's the crazy part. They could be better this year if that's possible. Second in total offense, second in total defense, second in scoring defense, first in pass defense, and they might be better. Up front, mentioned JT Tuimoloau is back, 7 TFLs, 5 sacks last year. Obviously, 2 years ago, really blew up in that Penn State game, forced fumbles, strip sacks, all that good stuff. Jack Sawyer's back, 10 TFLs, 6.5 sacks last year. Tyleik Williams is back, 10 TFLs, 3 sacks. Ty Hamilton, on and on. The linebacker room, some new names. Steel Chambers out, Tommy Eichenberg out. But Sonny Styles is in. He's played a lot at safety in the secondary. CJ Hicks is in as well. And then the secondary might actually be the area of strength because, like I said, 1, you had the number 1 pass defense in America last year. 2, you got a guy by the name of Caleb Downs coming in with all those other stars. Caleb Downs was unbelievable last year at Alabama, okay? I think we just take for granted Alabama dude. They've had great defensive backs, Patrick Surtain, Minkah Fitzpatrick, whoever. Caleb Downs was statistically maybe the best freshman defensive player in the history of Alabama football. 107 tackles in the SEC as a true freshman. As best I can tell, the only true freshman to ever lead Alabama in tackles. 3.5 TFLs, 2 INTs. He returned a punt for a touchdown. And that's in addition to Denzel Burke, to Jordan Hancock, to Lathan Ransom. So this roster is stacked soup to nuts. What makes it even better if you're an Ohio State fan? Schedule isn't easy because I don't think anybody has an easy schedule in the Big Ten, but it is manageable. First off, those first 3 out-of-conference games, last couple of years, you've played Oregon, you've played Notre Dame. No such thing this year. First 3 are all at home. Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall. I'm not going to criticize anybody for playing easy out-of-conference games in this SEC Big Ten dominant era. You do have to go to Michigan State in week 4. And I think it gets interesting after that. 4-game stretch, really, that in my opinion is going to tell us a ton about Ohio State. Now, 1 loss doesn't bury you like in previous years, but an interesting 4-game stretch. Iowa at home on October 5th. Make fun of Iowa. That offense has not been good. That was a top 10 defense nationally last year. And on top of it, not only that, they return a lot of players. Jay Higgins, the leading tackler in all of college football last year, is back. So Iowa's interesting. Then you go to Oregon. You get a bye. Nebraska is improved. Ohio State will obviously be a favorite there, but Nebraska was a top 20 defense in America on top of adding Dylan Raiola at quarterback. And then you have to go to Penn State. Hey, at least Penn State is a program that historically you have largely had success against. Finally, the last 4 games, it should be a relative cakewalk going into Michigan. Purdue at home, at Northwestern, Indiana, before you do close with Michigan. So the over-under for Ohio State is 10.5. And listen, let me tell you this. I'll just say, like, it's kind of a stay away to me. 10.5 is a lot of wins in a conference as good as the Big Ten. And by the way, this is a year you don't need to go undefeated. You don't even need to have one loss at this point in the college football playoff era. So when I look at this schedule, at Oregon, at Penn State, Michigan at home, even Iowa and Nebraska at home, I don't think you're going to lose those games. And one thing I will say, listen, everybody says all I do is criticize Ryan Day. Let me give Ryan Day credit. He doesn't lose games that he's supposed to. Disappointing record against Michigan. Disappointing record at times in the postseason. But he doesn't take those weird game at Iowa, loss to Purdue. You know, programs lose weird games. He never does. So that's the positive. But I just can't sit here and tell you that the over definitively is going to hit at 11. And I can't tell you that they're going to lose 2 games because they're going to be more talented than everyone they play other than Oregon. It will be interesting. Certainly if they go significantly under, we're probably going to have some talks about Ryan Day, potentially talks about the next Ohio State head coach. But I think, listen, they're going to win 10 or 11. I think it's a little unrealistic in this era to ask teams to go undefeated in the regular season. So many good games on the schedule. But I think it's going to be between that 10 and 11. And I just don't feel comfortable taking either side. It is a stay away to me. I think it's kind of like, to me, I'm not as big of a Ryan Day Ryan Day person as most. If you really believe in this team, instead of taking them at, minus money, instead of taking them with Ohio State at minus 150 to go over 10.5 wins, just take them at plus 150 to win the Big Ten. Now, transparently, I put out my college football playoff picks earlier this week on the Aaron Torres pod. I do have personally Oregon winning the Big Ten. But if you believe in Ohio State that much, I'd say just take them at plus 150 to win the Big Ten rather than minus 150 to go 11-1. All right, I think that's it for this episode of College Football Betting with Aaron Torres. Do me a quick favor. If you are not subscribed to the YouTube channel, go ahead and make sure to do it. College Football Betting with Aaron Torres. And by the way, if you're watching on YouTube and you're not subscribed to the podcast, go ahead and search College Football Betting with Aaron Torres. Find the podcast, download it, leave a 5-star rating and review. That's all for today's show. Appreciate everybody's support. We are plowing through these. Up next, hail to the victors. We are talking the defending national champion Michigan Wolverines. We'll be back